So I'd probably focus on sort of the SDI part. So column 3 there, we're looking at how this event or development contributed or had an impact to the end of the Cold War. So focusing on SDI then, what would you say? Rosie, go ahead and take this one.
I think SDI is kind of giving the credit for ending the Cold War and for the fall of the Soviet Union.
And why is it given that credit?
Because it shows the Soviet Union that they can't keep up the arms race and they're just going to stop.
Okay, so I like that. That SDI, the Strategic Defense Initiative, is really putting some pressure on the Soviets to keep up with the developments that the United States is utilizing. And, you know, the one aide, David Gergen, he even said he thought it hastened the end of the Cold War, meaning that it, you know, sped it up. I'll give you about 30 seconds to catch up then, and we'll talk about document 2 with the defense spending. All right, so I told you to try to focus on the years 84 to 89. So I'll go to Blake here. Blake, what did you notice was happening with the spending through those years?
I said there's definitely an increase in spending because if you look at it, in 84 it was only 227 million, but by 89 it was like 303 million. And that was all in the Reagan administration.
Great, so a steady increase there. And so how would the increase in military spending contribute to the end of the Cold War? Go ahead, Miles.
Like by spending more and more on military, push Gorbachev into like corner because he couldn't keep up.
Good, right? By the United States government spending more and more on the military, it's forcing Gorbachev to try to keep up. And I think Reagan knows this, right? He's utilizing this as a way to, you know, kind of put the tighten the screws down with Gorbachev and the Soviet Union. So we'll go to our third one, which was the diary excerpt from one of Gorbachev's aides. And now we're sort of kind of looking at the other side of the argument and a little bit more over to Gorbachev. So how would you say Gorbachev's stance position contributes to the end of the Cold War? Laura, can I go to you here?
I would say Gorbachev was like he was trying to move forward a lot, and I think that pushed them back from the Cold War. And like in the diary, he was like very highly praised for his revival and stuff, which I think led to a collapse of the Cold War.
Very good. Yeah. So obviously the people of the Soviet Union, especially those that are in leadership, are looking at Gorbachev as you know, making all the right moves. And Gorbachev even says he's at a point where he's willing to do whatever it takes to stop the arms buildup because he is now realizing that he probably cannot keep up. I'll give you about 30 seconds there, and then we'll transition over to the cartoon that was of the football player. All right, so our fourth one was of the football player getting off of the SALT agreement, being put on the steroids. So I'll go to Eleanor on this one. How do you think that contributes to the end of the Cold War? Good. I like the fact that you said overpowering the Soviet Union, right? That's what they've done here. It's sort of a play on the idea of arms, right? That you're building up your arms. If you were doing that as an athlete, right, you'd be, you know, getting stronger and bigger. But we know that arms also is short for the armaments, right, of the military. And the United States is trying to pump up or build up so much that they overwhelm the Soviet Union. Give you 30 seconds to catch up there, and then we'll go over to the speech from Reagan. we go to Natalia on this one. How would you say the speech from Reagan contributes to the end of the Cold War?
I think it was like really powerful and direct. So it sort of like convinced people in the Soviet Union that the US will sort of like stop at nothing and this is like what we want to happen. So it was just like really direct.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love those words, powerful and direct. And I would say, in essence, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to Gorbachev because Reagan is saying, hey, listen, you say that you're about openness and you say that you're, doing these things that represent change. Well, if that's the case, then prove it, show it. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. So I'll give you 30 seconds to catch up there, and then I'll give you a little bit more background to the speech itself. And, part of the reason it has resonated so much over time and it's become really part of the lore and the legacy of Reagan. So when Reagan went out there, he was specifically advised by State Department officials to not be too bellicose or aggressive in what he was saying, because clearly, there were signs that, Gorbachev and Reagan had been on good terms, that they were, negotiating. So the State Department was, telling President Reagan, don't do anything that would maybe upset this relationship at this point in time. Well, the night before that they are to be at the Brandenburg Gate and deliver the speech, the speechwriter and several other officials were at a dinner with some German citizens, and one of them happened to be somebody who lived in East Berlin, and they said something to the effect of, well, after 30 plus years, you might have, you must have gotten used to this by now. And the woman, with tears in her eyes, says to the diplomats, if you hadn't seen a member of your family in over 30 years, would you get used to that? And it then sort of kind of like dawned on them, like, the wall literally separated families, and people were in that position where they may have had family members on the other side of the wall that they had not seen in decades. So, speechwriter, puts all this language in. Reagan and him are in the car. Reagan's taking a look at the draft, and Reagan says to him, the people at state are not going to be real happy with this. Leave it in. And those 4 words became really sort of the tagline of the end of the Cold War. Tear down this wall. But they are punch marks the way that Reagan delivers them. And as the one person said, they thought it was just words, just rhetoric, but it resonated, which leads us to then the 6th document, the image of the Berlin Wall coming down. So how would you say this contributes to the end of the Cold War? Let me go to Zoe on this one.
I said it shows that America were able to get what they wanted and it shows that they have power.
All right, good. Gabe, can I go to you here? How would this represent the crumbling sort of both a tangible and an intangible piece of the Cold War?
Well, since it was put up, the wall had been like a symbol of the Cold War. So once it started coming down, it showed that like even the most divisive place ideologically had started to become unified, and that the Cold War was ending and everyone was coming together.
Great, yeah. So the wall itself becomes, since it was constructed in 61, both this tangible physical separation of East and West Berlin, but it's also a very intangible symbolic division of essentially Eastern communist ideas versus Western pro-democracy. And so the fall of the wall then represents an opportunity for those that had been oppressed on the East side to experience freedom and opportunity. And I want to share my screen because Zoe had asked this, and it was a good point to make out with regards to each side of the wall. The side that is coming down there with all the writing on it, that's the Western side, because that's where you could have some sort of expression. So on the opposite side here, on the Eastern side, this is all you would see, gray drabness all around, right? So that in and of itself, and you see the officials here, right, allowing it to come down. So let's go to our 7th one, which was the political cartoon. And I think we need to kind of indicate what the cartoon was inferring or implying about both Reagan and Gorbachev. So what would you say here? Rosie, go ahead.
Kind of that Reagan got all the credit, even though he didn't really know what was happening, because it says he doesn't know Gorbachev's name, and then Gorbachev, who did all the actual work, doesn't get any of the credit, and it's just behind Reagan.
Okay, so it's in essence, you said Gorbachev is kind of behind Reagan, or like he's in the shadow of Reagan. It has tear down the wall on Reagan's chest, a reference back to the speech. So you see on the cartoon that it says real hero on Gorbachev. So as far as that third column is concerned, I would probably put something to the effect that it's Gorbachev's policies. The policy of glasnost, you don't have to put the policies themselves in, but Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, perestroika, those help contribute to the end of the Cold War. And if you really take into consideration, that it's a pretty big 180-degree pivot for Gorbachev and the Soviet Union compared to where they used to be. I mean, think of what the Soviet Union was like under a Stalin regime, under a Khrushchev regime. This is a very big change. All right, as you finish up that last document, why don't you go ahead and on your own answer the central question. I think we've been able to present significant arguments on both sides. Do you think, or who do you think played the biggest role in bringing an end to the Cold War? Was it Ronald Reagan or Mikhail Gorbachev? Explain. So I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes to go ahead and answer that question.